So, Alexander Sarris, Director of the Commodities and Trade Division of the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. A very long title, but it's a very important area of work. We have a massively growing population, 9 billion predicted for 2020, 10 billion by 2050. How can the world feed so many people at a time of climate change?
Well, the way the trends are going, there shouldn't be a problem in feeding the world in 40 years. In other words, there is productive capacity, there is technology, there is resources to feed the world. Climate change will have, as you know from the IPCC report, different impacts in the South Hemisphere and in the North Hemisphere. So on balance, it is not anticipated that it will affect very adversely aggregate global production. What it may do is increase some instability in production, and I guess that will be regionally specific. But the distributional impacts of climate change may be significant in the sense that you may have decreases in production in some parts, especially of the developing world, while you may have increases in production in some parts of the northern hemisphere.
We are going to see growing competition though, aren't we, for land and for water as climate change progresses and as the need to produce food increases.
Yes, there will be especially an increased competition for water, and you are seeing that already in some parts of the world. Land as well, although there seem to be still significant land reserves in some continents, especially in Africa and in South America. But of course they need considerable investment to become productive, so that's one of the challenges for feeding the world.
There have been complaints that some developed countries are buying up land in Africa and producing food there, and then exporting it back to their home countries, which of course leaves Africa with not enough food.
Well, it's not really developed countries that are doing it. There are countries that face significant import needs, and they're not exactly buying up land. They're trying to explore a variety of schemes via which they can secure their supplies. For instance, you have countries in some, for instance, barren countries which are oil-rich, some Gulf countries, which are genuinely worried about their ability to import what they need. So one of the solutions is, of course, to try to secure production in some part of the world that is productive. And Africa is an obvious case. There's nothing wrong with that as long as it can be made in a win-win situation, both for the local population and for the ones who invest. Now, from the developed countries, the investments have been mostly by private sector, speculative kind of investments, trying to secure pieces of land for possible resale later. So there are various different types of things that are happening, and this has raised a lot of eyebrows in some parts of the world about the potential land grab and everything. But it can work actually as a win-win situation if it is managed properly.
There is, of course, also the problem of competition for the land from people who want to grow biofuel, given that the price of fuel has gone up, the oil is in short supply and may run out. And that has already, we've seen it, force up the price of basic commodities, particularly to the developed world.
Yes. The use of land for biofuel certainly takes land away from some other productive uses. It depends, of course, on what biofuel you produce, because with the current range of biofuels, yes, there is substitution. So the more you use for biofuels, the less you use for food or feed crops, and there may be contributions to the price rises like there were in the recent crisis. However, the technologies that are currently being researched, what they call the second generation biofuel technologies, lignocellulosic technologies and all that, those actually may not create competition for land. So the real investment that governments should do, public investment, is invest in these new technologies because they become actually a win-win situation in the sense of using lands that are not suitable for agriculture.
Presumably technology has to play a big part in our ability to feed ourselves. I've spoken to American scientists who say they cannot see how Europe imagines that the world can be fed by 2050 if we don't use genetic technology, for instance.
Well, there are several aspects to that. First of all, with current existing off-the-shelf technology, there is great potential to increase yields in some parts of the world which are lagging sorely behind in terms of yields, so as to increase production. For instance, the yield gaps in between northern developed countries and some developing countries are huge. And there are technologies off the shelf which can be used to increase production. So that's without GMOs or anything else. Nevertheless, in the developed countries, the yields are hitting some kind of a ceiling, and then you will need to use enhanced genetic technologies to increase yields. But the question may want to ask is, where are the best and most efficient sources of increased production? Is it in the north with a lot of investment in these things, or in the south where there is still plenty of resources and plenty of possibilities? And the technology, yes, GMOs is not only to increase productivity, but it's also for controlling a whole bunch of other attributes of production. So it's going to play its role, there's no doubt about it, but it's not going to be the only way.